The grand conclave chamber hummed with the quiet murmur of 2,000 counselors, their shimmering robes catching the pale blue light that filtered through the dome's crystalline architecture. High Speaker Saraxis stood at the center dais, his four-fingered hands pressed flat against the obsidian lectern, his gill slits fluttering with barely contained agitation. He had served the Dominion for 70 cycles. He had negotiated trade pacts with the ascendancy of 9 suns, brokered ceasefires during the border wars, and stared down warlords who commanded fleets that could darken entire systems. None of it had prepared him for this moment. "The refugee fleet from the outer reaches has been debriefed," Saraxis began, his voice carrying through the chamber's acoustic field. "Their vessels show damage consistent with high-yield kinetic impacts, weaponry we would classify as primitive, mass drivers, solid-core projectiles." Counselor Vashni of the Inner Circle leaned forward, her scales rippling with skepticism. "Pirates. The outer reaches have always been plagued by scavenger fleets. What makes these refugees worthy of the Conclave's attention?" "The pirates are dead, Counselor." Saraxis tapped the lectern's interface. A holographic projection bloomed above the dais, a debris field so vast it registered as a nebular cloud on long-range sensors. 73 vessels, corvettes, frigates, 3 captured Dominion destroyers retrofitted with illegal armaments, all of them destroyed within a single orbital cycle. The murmur died. Complete silence filled the chamber. "The survivors claim it was one ship," Saraxis continued. "A single warship of unknown configuration. It emerged from the dead zone and engaged the entire armada simultaneously." He paused, gill slits pressing tight against his neck. "They say it did not use energy weapons. It did not deploy fighter screens or swarm munitions. It simply absorbed their fire, every torpedo, every lance battery, every missile salvo, and then it moved." "Moved how?" Vashni's voice had lost its skepticism. "The refugees' tactical recordings are fragmented. Their sensor arrays were partially fried by whatever emission that ship generated, but they describe it as riding the storm. The vessel appeared to harness the energy of the pirate fleet's combined barrage, channel it through its hull, and redirect it into a propulsion signature that allowed it to outmaneuver 73 ships simultaneously." Someone in the upper galleries laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. "That's impossible. No hull material can absorb that much energy without vaporizing. No propulsion system can convert incoming fire into thrust." "The recordings have been verified by 3 separate analysis divisions," Saraxis said flatly. "Whatever attacked that pirate fleet came from the dead zone, and the dead zone is quarantined for a reason." Counselor Vashni rose from her seat. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but the acoustics carried it to every corner of the chamber. "There is nothing in the dead zone. We made certain of that 200 cycles ago." Saraxis met her gaze. He had read the sealed files. He knew what Vashni was referring to. The entire Inner Circle knew. It was the Dominion's oldest secret, buried beneath layers of classification so deep that even mentioning the species name aloud was a capital offense. "Apparently," Saraxis said, "we were wrong." The chamber erupted. Counselors shouted over one another. Demands for answers crashed against accusations of incompetence. Saraxis let the chaos build for a full minute before raising his hand. "The quarantine has been breached, whether by accident or intent, we do not yet know, but the refugees brought us this." He pulled up a new image, a fragment of hull plating recovered from one of the surviving vessels. Scorched into the metal in letters that matched no known language in the Dominion's vast linguistic databases was a single word. Archival analysis had taken 3 days to translate it. The answer came from records so old they predated the Dominion itself. "Retribution," Saraxis read aloud. "The word means retribution." The silence that followed was heavier than any that had come before. Part 2. Archivist militant Valen Kahl hated being dragged from her work. She was 3 cycles deep into cataloging the military histories of the Procyon expansion when the summons arrived, sealed with the High Speaker's personal sigil. Now she sat in a secure data vault beneath the Conclave complex, surrounded by records that made her carapace crawl. The refugee testimonies played on a loop in her peripheral vision, while she cross-referenced tactical descriptions with the Forbidden Archives. It was painstaking work. The Dominion had done its best to erase every trace of Terran contact, purging databases, incinerating physical records, even retiring the archivists who had handled the original files. But information Valen knew was like water. It found cracks. "The ship," she muttered, pulling up a reconstruction from the refugees' fragmented sensor data. "Describe it again." The hologram stabilized into a rough approximation, a vessel that looked nothing like the elegant, sweeping designs of Dominion warships. It was angular, blocky, built around a central spine that bristled with weapon emplacements. The proportions were wrong, too dense, too heavily armored, as if the designers had prioritized durability over aesthetics. Valen cross-referenced the silhouette against the sealed archives. The match came back at 97% confidence. Terran-class heavy cruiser, designation UES Retribution, status unknown. Her blood ran sluggish in her veins. The file was 200 cycles old. According to Dominion intelligence assessments from the First Contact era, the Terrans had possessed exactly 4 heavy cruisers at the time of the attempted eradication. All 4 had been reported destroyed during the orbital bombardment of Earth's outer colonies. Reported, not confirmed. She dug deeper, breaking through layers of encryption that had been state-of-the-art 2 centuries ago and were now merely quaint. The original field reports painted a picture that Dominion propaganda had carefully sanitized. The Terrans had not been passive victims. They had fought back with a ferocity that had shocked the expeditionary fleet. Their ships were slower, less maneuverable, armed with weapons that should have been useless against Dominion shielding. And yet, casualty report: 3rd Expeditionary Fleet lost 17 capital ships during the pacification of the Terran home system. Total fatalities: 47,000 Dominion personnel. Enemy losses: unknown. Terran military doctrine classified as extreme risk: do not engage without overwhelming numerical superiority. 17 capital ships. Valen read the number 3 times, certain she had misread. The Dominion had not lost 17 capital ships in the entire border wars combined. How had a species that had barely achieved interstellar flight managed to inflict such losses on the galaxy's most advanced military power? She opened the sealed psychological profiles next. The files were labeled with warnings: dangerous memetic content, authorized personnel only. The assessment officers had been terrified of the Terrans, not of their technology. The Dominion was centuries ahead in energy manipulation and shield theory. No, they were terrified of something far more fundamental. Species assessment: Terran Homo sapiens. Homeworld: Sol III local designation Earth. Environmental classification: Class 12 Death World. Gravity: 1 standard slightly above Dominion comfort range. Atmospheric composition: 21% oxygen, combustion hazard. Notable features: axial tilt creates extreme seasonal temperature variations, -40 to +50 standard units. Surface is 71% liquid water, corrosive to multiple Dominion alloys. Psychological assessment: Terrans evolved under constant environmental pressure. Their threat response systems are permanently elevated compared to baseline sentience. They do not experience flight responses in the same manner as Dominion species. When cornered, they default to maximum aggression. They are capable of functioning for extended periods under conditions that would induce psychosis in any known species. Recommendation: immediate eradication is strongly advised. If this species is permitted to advance technologically, they will become an existential threat to all Dominion civilization. Valen closed the file. Her hands were trembling. They had tried to eradicate them. They had failed. And now, 200 cycles later, a Terran warship had crossed the dead zone and entered Dominion space. She composed a priority message to High Speaker Saraxis. It contained only 4 words. They remember they returned. Part 3. The reconnaissance drones were the first to die. 12 autonomous scout platforms, spread across the border sector in a standard detection net, went silent within the span of 3 heartbeats. No alarm signals, no telemetry bursts. They simply stopped transmitting, their last data packets showing a single vessel emerging from the gravitational shadow of a gas giant where no ship should have been. The Dominion Border Command post on Velaris Station scrambled to compensate, launching backup drones and redirecting passive sensor arrays. The picture that emerged sent the station's commanding officer into immediate cardiac arrest, a medical condition virtually unknown among Velari, whose redundant cardiovascular systems were designed to handle extreme stress. The ship was wrong. It defied every principle of Dominion naval architecture, where Velari vessels flowed in elegant curves designed to deflect sensor pings and minimize energy signatures. This ship was a brutalist monument to function. It was long, nearly 2 kilometers from stern to bow, with a profile that suggested a blade more than a vessel. Its hull was the color of deep space shadow, absorbing active scans rather than reflecting them. Weapon emplacements dotted its surface in patterns that made no tactical sense, until the tactical computers realized they provided overlapping fields of fire with 0 blind spots. But it was the energy signature that made the Border Command's senior analysts physically ill. Dominion ships ran hot. Fusion cores, plasma conduits, shield generators, all of it produced waste heat that had to be managed carefully. The alien vessel's thermal output should have been impossible. It radiated enough energy to power a small moon, and the emissions spiked chaotically, surging and ebbing in patterns that suggested the ship was holding back. The comms officer on Velaris Station broadcast the standard hail on all frequencies. Unknown vessel, you have entered sovereign territory of the Velari Dominion. Identify yourself and state your intentions immediately. Failure to comply will be considered an act of aggression. The response arrived 3 seconds later. The alien ship had received the transmission, processed it, and formulated a reply in flawless Velari high speech, a language so complex that even most Dominion citizens spoke only simplified regional dialects. We are returning. 3 words, spoken in a voice that was unmistakably organic, not synthesized. The tone carried something the comms officer could not immediately identify. It took him several moments to realize what he was hearing was exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, something deeper. Something that had been carried across 200 cycles of silence. The recording was transmitted to the Grand Conclave immediately. By the time it arrived, the alien vessel had already crossed the border and was moving deeper into Dominion space at a steady, unhurried pace. It was not accelerating. It was not evading. It was simply proceeding. High Speaker Saraxis convened an emergency session. The Council of Eternal Radiance gathered in their ceremonial chamber, but there was no ceremony in their voices. It's one ship, Counselor Vashni said, her scales dull with stress. One ship against the entire Dominion Navy. This is not an invasion, it's a provocation, a test. Or a message, Saraxis replied. And we would be wise to understand what message they intend to deliver before we respond. War Prince Tazik of the 7th Battle Fleet rose from his seat with the kind of confidence that came from never having lost an engagement. He was young by Velari standards, barely 80 cycles, but his tactical record was impeccable. 3 pirate armadas, 2 separatist rebellions, 1 border skirmish with the Threxian Compact that had ended with the Compact ceding 4 systems. With respect, High Speaker, you are overcomplicating this. Whatever that ship is, whatever species built it, they have violated Dominion sovereignty. The law is clear. The response is clear. He gestured toward the tactical display showing the alien vessel's trajectory. Give me command of the 7th Fleet. I will intercept this intruder and extract answers or debris, preferably both. The 7th Fleet is 12 capital ships, Saraxis said quietly. If the refugee testimonies are accurate. The refugees were pirates, cowards, liars. They inflated the threat to excuse their own failure. Tazik's gill slits flared with disdain. No single ship can stand against a Dominion battle formation. The physics alone make it impossible. Archivist Militant Valen Call spoke for the first time, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. The Terrans killed 17 of our capital ships 200 cycles ago. They had 4 cruisers at the time. Now they have 1, and it crossed the dead zone to knock on our door. You wish to test the physics, War Prince. Tazik's gaze fixed on her with cold intensity. You speak a dead name. That species was eradicated. No, Valen said. That species was quarantined. There is a difference, and I believe we are about to learn exactly how significant that difference was. The vote was swift. Tazik received his command. The 7th Fleet scrambled for intercept coordinates. The alien vessel continued its steady advance, making no effort to hide, no attempt to communicate further. As the War Prince's flagship slipped into formation, its tactical officer reported a new development. The alien ship had begun broadcasting something. Not a hail, not a threat. A data packet, massive, heavily compressed, and directed specifically at the 7th Fleet's command network. What is it? Tazik demanded. The tactical officer's voice was unsteady. Historical records, War Prince, military logs, video footage, it's the first contact war from their perspective. The data packet finished transmitting. The alien ship went silent. And then it waited. Part 4. The bridge of the Dominion flagship Eternal Radiance was a masterpiece of military engineering. Holographic displays ringed the command platform, projecting real-time tactical data from the entire 7th Fleet. 12 capital ships formed a crescent blockade, their overlapping shield envelopes creating what should have been an impenetrable wall of force. 57 support vessels, frigates, corvettes, picket ships, filled the gaps. War Prince Tazik stood at the center of it all, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the bridge lights, and felt the first flicker of something he had not experienced in 40 cycles of military service. Uncertainty. The data packet from the alien vessel had been analyzed, cross-referenced, and verified by the fleet's intelligence division. Every frame of video, every line of text, every audio recording, it was all authentic. The footage showed the first contact, a Dominion expeditionary fleet, commanded by High Executor Valerian the Purifier, encountering a Terran colonial vessel in an unclaimed system. Standard protocols would have called for observation, communication attempts, assessment. Valerian had instead ordered immediate destruction. The Terran ship was unarmed, a civilian transport carrying 2,000 colonists to a new settlement. It had no shielding capable of deflecting Dominion weaponry. It had no weapons capable of fighting back. It died in 17 seconds. The footage continued. The Dominion fleet tracked the transport's emergency beacon to the Terran home system. They found a species that had barely established permanent settlements on its own moon, whose warships were primitive things armed with chemical propellant weapons and fission warheads. Valerian's assessment had been swift and brutal: existential threat, extreme danger, exterminate immediately. The orbital bombardment of Earth's outer colonies began 12 hours later. Tazik watched the footage with his command staff. He watched Terran ships, slow, ugly, underpowered things, throw themselves at the Dominion fleet with no hope of survival. He watched civilian stations targeted, escape pods vaporized, planetary surfaces glassed. He watched a species that had done nothing to provoke attack being systematically annihilated. And he watched them fight back. The Terran military doctrine was nothing like anything the Dominion had encountered. They did not retreat. They did not negotiate. They did not surrender. When their ships were crippled, they rammed. When their stations were boarded, they detonated their own reactors. When Dominion ground forces landed on Terran colonies, they found no civilians to pacify, only armed resistance that fought from every building, every street, every room. Casualty report: 17 capital ships lost, 47,000 Dominion personnel killed. The recordings ended with the quarantine. The Dominion could not complete the eradication. The cost was too high, the political fallout too risky. Instead, they withdrew, established a blockade around the Terran system, and erased all records of what they had done. The dead zone was created. Humanity was imprisoned in its own home system, cut off from the galaxy, left to die in isolation. Except they had not died. Tazik opened a channel to the alien vessel. His voice was steady, but the words tasted like ash in his mouth. Unidentified vessel, this is War Prince Tazik of the Velari Dominion 7th Battle Fleet. You are in violation of sovereign Dominion space. You will cut your engines, power down your weapons, and prepare to be boarded. This is your final warning. The response came immediately. The voice was female, calm, carrying an accent that the translators struggled with, as if the speaker had learned Velari high speech from records 2 centuries old. War Prince Tazik, my name is Captain Lena Voss of the United Earth Ship Retribution. I am not here to violate your sovereignty. I am here to remind you that you violated ours first. You are referencing events that occurred 200 cycles ago. No living Velari was present for. 200 cycles is a long time for your species. For mine, it is 8 generations. We are not like you, War Prince. We do not forget, we do not forgive, and we do not go quietly into the dark you tried to bury us in. A pause. I am transmitting something to your fleet. It is not a weapon. It is not a virus. It is the truth. What your people do with it is your choice. The transmission cut off. Simultaneously, every display in the 7th Fleet flickered and reset. The data packet, the full, unredacted history of the First Contact War, began broadcasting not just to the military network but to every civilian receiver within range. Planetary networks, station comms, personal devices. The Dominion's carefully constructed lie was being dismantled in real time, one packet at a time. Tazik stared at the tactical display. The Terran ship had not moved. It was simply sitting there, broadcasting, as if daring him to stop it. War Prince, his tactical officer said, voice strained. We're receiving reports from the inner systems. The broadcasts are spreading. Civilian networks are picking them up. News agencies are already. Silence. Tazik's gill slits fluttered rapidly. He could feel control slipping away. The engagement was no longer military. It was political, informational, and the Dominion was losing. Order the fleet to stand by, he said. No one fires without my direct. War Prince, the comms officer's voice cracked. We're being hailed, direct line, it's the high speaker. Syraxis's face appeared on the main display, his expression taut with barely controlled fury. Tazik, do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. The broadcasts are spreading faster than we can contain them. If you fire on that ship now, you'll confirm every accusation they're making. We'll lose the civilian sectors completely. What would you have me do, High Speaker? Allow this intruder to continue poisoning our networks while my fleet sits here looking impotent? I would have you think, War Prince. That ship crossed the dead zone alone. It knows it cannot defeat the entire Dominion Navy. It came here for a reason, and it is not conquest. Determine what it wants. Find a way to contain this that does not involve orbital bombardment of an unarmed. It is not unarmed, High Speaker. It is not firing. There is a distinction. Syraxis's voice hardened. You wanted this command, Tazik, now command, and do not start a war that we may not be able to finish. The transmission ended. Tazik stood motionless on his bridge, surrounded by the most powerful fleet in Dominion history, and felt completely, utterly powerless. Captain Voss's voice returned, soft and patient. "We have given you the truth, War Prince. Now we are going to give you 60 seconds to decide what you want to do with it. After that, the conversation changes." The Terran ship went silent. The countdown began. Part 5. The 60 seconds felt longer than Tazik's entire military career. His tactical officers worked frantically, analyzing the Terran vessel's capabilities from the limited data they had. The refugees' sensor recordings showed the ship absorbing enough firepower to crack a small moon. The historical records showed Terran vessels destroying Dominion capital ships through methods that defied conventional tactical analysis. And the energy readings radiating from the Retribution suggested power reserves that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. "War Prince," his intelligence officer said, "we've completed our analysis of the broadcast data. It's not just historical records. They embedded a secondary packet, a technical manifesto, schematics, scientific papers, cultural archives. It's everything. Their entire civilization's development over the past 200 cycles." Tazik turned sharply. "Show me." The data unfolded across his display. 200 years of Terran advancement compressed into digestible summaries. They had not spent their quarantine building warships. They had not focused on weapons development or military expansion. Instead, they had poured their resources into 3 specific areas: defensive technology, energy manipulation, and non-lethal neutralization systems. The armor on the Retribution was not conventional plating. It was a self-repairing composite that grew stronger with each impact, incorporating the energy of incoming fire into its own molecular structure. Their shield technology, which the Dominion had dismissed as primitive 2 centuries ago, had evolved into something that operated on principles the Velari could barely understand. And their weapon systems. Tazik read the specifications 3 times, then he read them again. "They can target specific ship systems," he said quietly. "They can strip a vessel of its weapons without breaching its hull. They can disable engines without endangering life support. They can render an entire fleet combat ineffective without a single casualty," his intelligence officer finished. "Yes, War Prince, that appears to be their primary military doctrine." The 60 seconds ended. Captain Voss's voice returned to the bridge speakers. "War Prince Tazik, your 60 seconds are up. We have given you the truth about what your people did to ours. We have shown you what we have become in the time since. Now we need your answer. Will you stand down and allow diplomatic channels to open? Or will you do what your ancestors did and attempt to destroy what you do not understand?" Tazik's hands clenched at his sides. Every instinct screamed at him to attack. The Dominion did not negotiate with intruders. The Dominion did not allow foreign vessels to broadcast propaganda into civilian networks. The Dominion responded to threats with overwhelming force. But the Dominion had also lied to its own people for 200 cycles. The Dominion had attempted genocide and then covered it up. The Dominion had created the dead zone and called it a quarantine to hide its own shame. "Captain Voss," Tazik said, his voice rough, "you have committed an act of information warfare against the Velari Dominion. The historical accuracy of your claims is not something I can verify from my position. I am a military commander, not a historian. My duty is to protect Dominion space from external threats." "We are not a threat, War Prince. We are a reminder there is a difference. You entered our space without authorization. You are broadcasting unauthorized data across civilian networks. You are demanding answers to questions that were sealed before I was born. From where I stand, you are absolutely a threat." A long pause. When Voss spoke again, her voice had lost its patient edge. "War Prince, let me be clear. We did not cross 200 light-years of empty space, break through a quarantine that your people thought was impenetrable, and sail into the heart of your territory to be lectured about authorization. Your government tried to exterminate my species. Your ancestors murdered 200,000 civilians in the opening hours of an unprovoked war. And when they could not finish the job, they built a wall around our system and pretended we did not exist. Tazik said nothing. You want to know why we are here? We are here because your people need to see us, to hear us, to know that the fairy tale they tell their children about the monsters in the dark is real. We are not monsters, War Prince. We are the people you tried to kill, and we are still standing. The tactical display flickered. The Terran ship was moving, not toward the fleet but perpendicular to it, as if positioning itself for something. War Prince, his sensor officer's voice was sharp. The Terran vessel is deploying something, multiple small objects, hundreds of them, no thousands. Tazik watched as the Retribution released a swarm of tiny drones, each no larger than a personal transport. They scattered in all directions, spreading through the fleet formation and beyond into the surrounding space. Are they weapons? Negative, War Prince. They appear to be broadcast relays. They're amplifying the data transmission, pushing it deeper into the network. Civilian sectors that were previously shielded are now receiving the full packet. The tactical implications were clear. The Terrans were not just broadcasting to the fleet anymore. They were saturating the entire sector, every colony, every station, every ship within range. The truth was spreading faster than the Dominion could possibly contain it. And there was nothing Tazik could do to stop it without firing on an unarmed vessel in full view of the entire Dominion. Captain Voss spoke one final time. Your move, War Prince. Part 6. Tazik made his choice. All ships, he said, his voice carrying across the fleet command network, target the Terran vessel. Concentrated fire on my command. Primary batteries only. I want maximum penetration on the first salvo. His tactical officer hesitated. War Prince, the High Speaker's orders. The High Speaker is not on this bridge. The High Speaker is not watching our civilian networks collapse under a foreign information assault. The High Speaker gave me command of this fleet and I am commanding. Tazik's gill slits flared wide. Fire. 12 capital ships released their combined might. Energy lances that could vaporize asteroid stations. Plasma torpedoes that burned at temperatures approaching stellar cores. Kinetic rounds accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The combined salvo represented enough destructive force to crack a continental plate. The Terran vessel made no attempt to evade. The first impact struck the Retribution's hull and stopped. The energy did not dissipate. It did not deflect. It was absorbed, drawn into the ship's armor like water into dry sand. The hull rippled, actually rippled, as if the metal itself had become liquid and then stabilized. The ship's thermal signature spiked dramatically, then leveled off. Impossible, Tazik breathed. The Retribution continued its slow, methodical deployment of broadcast drones. It had not returned fire. It had not raised shields. It had simply absorbed the most powerful weaponry the Dominion Navy could bring to bear. Again, Tazik ordered. All batteries, continuous fire. Do not stop until that ship is debris. The fleet complied. Salvo after salvo crashed into the Terran vessel. The armor rippled and flowed with each impact. The thermal signature climbed. The broadcast continued. And then the Retribution began to change. The armor stopped rippling. Instead, it seemed to solidify, hardening into something denser and darker than before. The thermal emissions dropped sharply as the ship's systems somehow channeled the absorbed energy into something else. War Prince, the sensor officer said, the Terran vessel's power readings are increasing. They're using our own fire to charge their systems. That's not possible. It is happening. On the main display, Captain Voss's face appeared. Her expression was not triumphant. It was not angry. It was something far worse, it was disappointed. You made your choice, War Prince. I want you to understand something before this continues. We did not come here to destroy you. We did not come here to conquer you. We came here to give you a chance to be better than your ancestors, a chance to face what you did and choose differently. She paused. You chose the same path they did: violence, erasure, denial. We are defending our sovereign. You are defending a lie. You are defending genocide. You are defending the quarantine of an entire species while telling your people we were a myth. Her voice hardened. We gave you the truth. You tried to destroy us for it. Now we will show you what 200 years of preparation looks like. The transmission cut off. The retribution engaged. It did not fire weapons in the conventional sense. No energy beams, no torpedoes, no mass drivers. Instead, the ship seemed to pulse, a wave of invisible force that radiated outward at impossible speed, washing over the entire 7th Fleet in less than a second. Every Dominion ship went dark. Not permanently, not catastrophically, but systematically. Weapon systems shut down, shield generators deactivated, targeting computers flickered and reset to factory defaults. The fleet's entire offensive and defensive capability was stripped away in the span of a single heartbeat. "Status report," Tazik shouted. "All weapon systems offline, War Prince. Shields are down. We're running diagnostics, but whatever they hit us with, it bypassed every layer of security. It's as if the systems simply turned themselves off." "What about the other ships?" "Same status, fleet-wide. We are completely combat ineffective." The Retribution sat in the center of the crippled formation, untouched, unhurried, broadcasting still. Its drones continued to spread outward, carrying the truth deeper into Dominion space. Captain Voss's voice returned one final time. "Your fleet is intact. Your crews are unharmed. Your life support and engines remain functional. You can return to your bases, repair your systems, and pretend this never happened. Or you can accept what we are offering, a conversation. A real one, between equals." She paused. "The choice is still yours, War Prince, but I would recommend you make a different one this time." The channel remained open. The Retribution waited. And Tazik, surrounded by the most powerful fleet in Dominion history, a fleet that could not fire a single shot, found that he had no idea what to do next. Part 7. The silence on the bridge of the Eternal Radiance was absolute. Not the comfortable silence of disciplined officers awaiting orders, but the suffocating silence of 200 souls confronting the unthinkable. Their ship still functioned. Their life support still hummed. Their engines still burned. But their weapons, the instruments of Dominion power that had enforced order across 1,000 star systems, were dead. War Prince Tazik stared at the tactical display. 12 capital ships, 57 support vessels, 17,000 Dominion personnel, all rendered helpless by a single pulse from a single ship that had not even bothered to raise its shields. He opened the channel to Captain Voss. "What do you want?" The Terran captain's face appeared on the main display. Up close, she looked nothing like the monsters from Dominion propaganda. She was a bipedal mammalian with dark skin, close-cropped hair, and eyes that carried the weight of generations. Her uniform was simple, no decorations, no ceremonial flourishes, just functional fabric and a single insignia, a stylized representation of her homeworld, surrounded by an olive branch. 200 years ago, your people came to our system and tried to kill us. They failed. Then they built a wall around us and erased us from history. We spent those 200 years asking ourselves what we would do if we ever got out, what justice would look like, what punishment would fit the crime. She leaned forward slightly. "Do you know what we decided?" Tazik said nothing. "We decided that punishment was not the point. Annihilation would make us no better than your ancestors. Conquest would prove them right about us being monsters. So we chose a different path. We built ships not designed to kill, but to stop. We developed technology that could neutralize aggression without causing death. We prepared for the day when we would finally meet you again, not as victims seeking revenge, but as equals demanding accountability. Accountability, Tazik repeated. You want us to admit what we did. I want your people to know what your people did. The broadcasts are already spreading. The records are already being downloaded. The truth is out, War Prince. What happens next depends on what your civilization does with it. And if we do nothing, if we repair our ships and continue as before, then we will continue as well. This is not a one-time event. We are not going back to the dead zone. The quarantine is broken and we are not rebuilding it. We will be here at the edge of your space, broadcasting the truth to anyone willing to listen. We will be a mirror that your government cannot look away from. Tazik felt something shift in his chest. Not anger, not fear, something closer to recognition. You are not what I expected, he said quietly. What did you expect? A conquering fleet, demands for surrender, threats of annihilation, the same things we would have done if our positions were reversed. He paused. Instead you have disarmed us, literally and figuratively. You have made violence impossible and left us with nothing but words. Words are harder than violence, War Prince. They require more courage, more wisdom, more willingness to be wrong. Captain Voss's expression softened slightly. Your fleet will regain weapons control in approximately 4 hours. The neutralization field is temporary. We designed it that way deliberately. We want you to have the option of fighting us again, and we want you to choose not to take it. That is a remarkable gamble. It is not a gamble, it is a test, and you are passing it. Tazik looked around his bridge. His officers were watching him, not with judgment, but with something that looked unsettlingly like hope. They had been raised on stories of Dominion supremacy, of the righteousness of their military power, of the necessity of the dead zone quarantine. And now they were watching their commander speak to a fairy tale as an equal. Captain Voss, Tazik said, I am a military commander. I do not have the authority to negotiate treaties or make diplomatic commitments, but I can facilitate a conversation between your people and our government, if that is truly what you want. That is all we have ever wanted. The broadcasts continue. The broadcasts continue until the conversation begins. That is not negotiable. Tazik's gill slits fluttered, understood. He cut the channel and turned to his communications officer. Get me High Speaker Saraxis, priority channel, tell him the situation has changed. The officer nodded and began working her console. Tazik turned back to the tactical display, watching the Terran ship, the Retribution, drift through the center of his crippled formation. It was still broadcasting. It would continue broadcasting until the Dominion faced what it had done. For the first time in his military career, War Prince Tazik felt something that might have been respect for an enemy. Not because they had defeated him. He had been defeated before, in simulations and war games, and learned from every loss. But because they had defeated him without killing a single one of his crew. Because they had chosen a harder path than annihilation. Because they had turned his own violence into a lesson. War Prince, his tactical officer said, the High Speaker is on the line. Tazik straightened his uniform and prepared to tell his government that the fairy tale was real. The quarantine was broken, and the galaxy would never be the same. Part 8. High Speaker Saraxis had not slept in 3 cycles. The conclave chamber was empty now. The counselors had been dismissed hours ago, sent back to their quarters with strict instructions to speak to no one until the crisis was resolved. Only a handful of senior advisors remained, along with Archivist Militant Valen Kahl, who had been quietly coordinating the historical analysis of the Terran data packet. The main display showed the 7th Fleet, still adrift, still disarmed. The Terran vessel had moved to a stable orbit at the edge of the system and had finally stopped broadcasting. The drones continued their work, The truth was still spreading, but the retribution itself had gone quiet. "Their captain wishes to speak with me directly," Saraxis said. "She requested the meeting an hour ago. I have been gathering my thoughts." Valen looked up from her data screens. "What is there to gather? They have made their demands clear. They want acknowledgement, accountability, a public admission of what the Dominion did 2 centuries ago. They are not asking for territory or resources or political concessions. They are asking for the truth." "The truth," Saraxis said slowly, "would destroy this government." The Inner Circle approved the eradication order. The Council of Eternal Radiance voted to establish the quarantine. Every institution that holds power in the Dominion is complicit in attempted genocide. If we admit that publicly, then those institutions deserve to be destroyed. Valen's voice was flat. "High Speaker, I have spent the past 3 cycles reading the Terran historical records in full, not just the war footage, their culture, their philosophy, their understanding of justice. Do you know why they did not destroy the 7th Fleet? Why they developed technology specifically designed to neutralize without killing?" Saraxis shook his head. "Because they asked themselves the same question we are asking now. What do you do when you discover your ancestors committed atrocities? When your civilization was built on blood? When the comfortable lies you were raised with turn out to be poison?" Valen stood, her carapace catching the pale light. "They did not tear themselves apart. They did not descend into civil war or self-flagellation. They faced it. They built memorials. They reformed their institutions. They made the truth part of their identity instead of hiding from it. That is a very noble story. It is a very human story, and it is the reason they are out there right now, waiting for your call instead of turning our homeworld into glass. They are giving us the chance they gave themselves, the chance to be better than our past." Saraxis was silent for a long moment. Then he activated the comm system. The face of Captain Lena Voss appeared on the main display. She looked tired, the same bone-deep exhaustion that Saraxis felt in his own body. "High Speaker Saraxis, thank you for taking my call." "Captain Voss, I understand you wish to speak." "I wish to end this. The broadcasts have achieved their purpose. The Dominion civilian population now knows what was done in their name. The military knows that we are not the monsters they were raised to fear. What remains is the political resolution." She paused. "You know what we are asking? A public acknowledgement of the attempted eradication, an official apology, the permanent dissolution of the dead zone quarantine, and accountability for those responsible. There are no living individuals who bear direct responsibility. We understand that. We are not asking for show trials or scapegoats. We are asking for the Dominion to look at its own history and tell the truth about it, to its own people, to the galaxy, to us." Saraxis felt the weight of 200 cycles of lies pressing down on his shoulders. "If I do this, the Dominion as we know it will not survive. The political fallout will be catastrophic. The Inner Circle will revolt. The military factions will splinter. We could be looking at a civil war." "With respect, High Speaker, that is not my problem to solve. It is yours. My people spent 200 years paying for a crime we did not commit. We are not asking you to pay for the crimes of your ancestors. We are asking you to stop pretending those crimes did not happen." Captain Voss's expression hardened. "The alternative is that we continue this dance indefinitely. We will remain at your border. We will continue broadcasting. We will be a constant reminder that the Dominion is built on a foundation of genocide and lies. Your choice is not between stability and chaos. It is between a difficult truth and a permanent state of confrontation." Saraxis looked at Valen. The Archivist Militant met his gaze with steady, unblinking eyes. He looked at the tactical display, showing the 7th Fleet slowly regaining its weapon systems, War Prince Tazik making no move to re-engage. He looked at the data packet, the Terran historical records, their culture, their philosophy, their stubborn, impossible refusal to die or to become what they had fought against. "Captain Voss," he said quietly, "on behalf of the Villari Dominion, I acknowledge that 200 cycles ago, this government attempted to eradicate your species. I acknowledge that we imprisoned your civilization in your home system and erased all records of your existence. I acknowledge that we lied to our own people about what we had done." He paused, feeling the words settle into the air like stones dropped into still water. "I am prepared to make this acknowledgement publicly. I am prepared to begin the process of accountability. And I am prepared to formally dissolve the dead zone quarantine and welcome your species into the galactic community." Captain Voss was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than Saraxis had heard it before. "Thank you, High Speaker. That could not have been easy." "It was not, it is not. The difficult part is still ahead." "Yes, it is." She straightened in her chair. "The Retribution will withdraw to the border. We will maintain a presence there until the diplomatic framework is established. But the broadcasts will stop. You have our word." "And what happens now?" Now we talk, actually talk, about trade, about cultural exchange, about what it looks like for two species with a bloody history to coexist in the same galaxy." A faint smile crossed her face. "It will be hard. It will be messy. There will be people on both sides who want the old hatred to continue, but it will be real, and that is all we ever wanted." The transmission ended. The main display shifted back to the tactical view, the Retribution turning, its engines flaring as it began its slow journey back toward the border. Saraxis sat in the empty conclave chamber, surrounded by the ghosts of 2 centuries of lies, and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Hoping. Outside the dome, the stars were the same as they had always been. But somewhere among them, a species that should have been dead was sailing home, carrying with them the knowledge that the fairy tale was over. Humanity had returned. And this time they had come in peace.